Dear colleagues, dear explorers, I'm calling you back into the room. I can see people on the move, which is good. So we're gonna give a few seconds, like every time at the start of a new session, for people on the move to make it to their seats. Okay, welcome back. We finished the previous session with thinking already about the role of our academy. But there were also quite some questions still there. How does this first edition of the academy, where its position and its role also in these more institutional processes? Or how is it relating to some other institutional processes, moments, and events? So in order to bring a little bit of a picture also to that question, I will first invite and give the floor to Sonja Mitter-Schkull, who is the coordinator of our first edition, to paint for us this picture quickly, concretely, and then we're going to continue with our panel discussion. So Sonja, the floor is yours. Woohoo!
No, it's on. Okay. So we thought before we some members of and that are connected and at European level, at national level, will give you some of their perspectives about the future of the academy. We would a little bit, just for a moment, frame again where this event situates itself. We've spoken about this on the very first day. Remember when you came on Monday in the very first session? But maybe this is already, some of it is maybe already in the background after all the things that have happened since then. So I briefly recall some of the elements that you might have heard already. So the convention, European Academy on Youth Work, in particular, follows up from the last convention, European Youth Work Convention, which took place in 2015, where it was recommended that the concepts and strategies and practices of youth work would need to further develop in order to respond better to ongoing and emerging trends and developments in society and the needs of young people. In order for youth work to be able to do that, one of the things that maybe we thought, or the steering group in particular, thought would be necessary is that in the first place, it's needed to create more knowledge actually about what is happening. Yeah, it's good to pass recommendations about what should happen, but also it's needed to gather more knowledge in the very first place and to create awareness and to allow for dialogue around what happens. I think this has been said this morning very much. So, in the very first place, this project of the European Youth Work Academy has been created as a space to gather knowledge and to create awareness about questions like what are the key trends and what are the key developments, what are the challenges and needs, and what approaches, innovative approaches exist already, and what responses, and what can we think of in order to take things forward. Yeah. There were some elements that were considered to be important in this framework. So we've said already it should be a long-term project. Nobody says this can be done in one event. It's a longer-term perspective, and this is a pilot that just starts it all off. There are a lot of open questions as to its future, so nothing is set in stone at the moment. It has been conceived this process or this project as a high-level kind of event. Yeah. Now the question is what that means, but the reflections and the insights that should be gained during the events that would happen inside this academy should really allow to gather knowledge and insights, meaning there should be high-level reflections happening. Yeah, so bringing people together in a way that means also bringing people together that have the experience to contribute to this. And it should involve, of course, key stakeholders in European youth work. Now, there were already questions this morning around who these key stakeholders would be, but of course, in the first place, they are also the key stakeholders at European level, yeah, that are involved in this process, but possibly also others. It should be a place for learning, exchange, and networking. It should be a transparent process or project, an open project that can be joined. And it should enable, and also this has been said, both personal learning and the learning as a field. Yeah. Accordingly, we've adopted a methodology which we hope, at least during this first event, would enable that. Very quickly, innovative practices and approaches should be presented. That was there from the start, that we would gather what is going on to some extent. We wanted to enable learning as a field also by using research. This has been very present here. We've tried out a lot of digital tools with you, both for you to see a little bit, also to get an idea of what it exists and what you can use. Things like this app, this event app, or badges, yeah. But also as a tool to collect outcomes, to collect learning for research purposes. Yeah? Also for that reason, we've used all kinds of digital tools. And we've invested in, or we are still investing in disseminating information and creating a lot of visibility around this event to increase its impact and to allow more people to take part in it. Importantly, the outcomes. It's maybe important to say the European Academy on Youth Work is not a political event at the moment. A lot of events of that size, of that dimension, lead to recommendations, political recommendations. We have consciously, the steering group has consciously said, not that. We don't want to pass recommendations. It's a space for learning. So we produce learning outcomes, we produce findings. That, however, should inform political processes. Yeah. So there is a clear connection to the political processes that happen, but it's not an event that creates recommendations in itself, but rather contributes with knowledge, insights, awareness about what's going on and what could be done. And now the last of these slides relates to indeed, so pinpointing, okay, there is the convention, there's the academy, the European Youth Work agenda that has been mentioned. So, how do we deal with the outcomes of this event? First question. Of course, we will send, that's a simple answer, we will send the report with all the findings that Theo has gathered and that you have contributed to the main stakeholders in the field. We will send it, of course, to the Commission and to the Council of Europe and to the national agencies and whoever else is relevant. Yeah? But also, we hope that the outcomes that we will gather here will feed into the next European Youth Work Convention, for instance, or in particular, which will happen at the end of next year, hosted by Germany. A bit in parallel with the Youth Work Convention, Germany will have the presidency of the European Union, right? Also at the end of next year. And there is a perspective to create, during this presidency, a European Youth Work agenda. Okay? This is in the making. It might happen. And this agenda, as we've also said already, I think it was said before, might, if it comes into existence, hopefully include measures that should support the further development of youth work. Potentially, the European Youth Work Convention, or indeed also the European Academy on Youth Work, could be taken up as potential measures in that framework. Therefore, we've been gathering also, we've been asking you to say, okay, if something like this comes about, what would be important for you to consider in this framework? So a lot of issues have been mentioned also by you already. The team of this academy The steering group will have an evaluation meeting in about a month's time, where it will look into this first event, into what it has done, if it's worth continuing it, and in which direction. We have asked you here to reflect a bit from your side what you think would be important, and you will all receive from me an evaluation questionnaire after this event, where you can maybe take a moment to share your thoughts and your reflections and your suggestions concretely, and so that we will be able to take that into account also at the evaluation meeting, yeah, when the steering group will think further about how to continue with this process. This is it from my side, really. There's nothing more. This is just a little bit to frame, and I think the panel speakers will give you a lot more information that relates to that, and you will have the possibility to learn more about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Okay, it's time. So we are going into the very well announced and exciting panel. So in order for us to have a little bit more reflection and debate and discussion about it, I'm going to ask, yes, my colleague Tue will help me with the next slide. And I'm going to actually invite here with me on stage a few people to discuss now. So first, let me invite Uwe Finke-Timpe. Uwe, please join us on stage. Uwe is from Unit for European and International Youth Policy from Federal Ministry for Family Affairs, Senior Citizens, Women and Youth from Germany. Welcome. Applause. There we go. Welcome, Uwe. Also, I would like to invite Lois Rutten, a board member from European Youth Forum. Welcome. Join us. Then Gvoda Lumanaite, the director of Lithuanian National Agency. Welcome, Gvoda. Janez Škulj, the president of governing board of MOVIT, the Slovenian National Agency. Welcome, Janez. And of course, Davide Capecchi from the partnership between the Council of Europe and European Union in the field of youth. Welcome. So, we have now a very exciting moment. Namely, I'm going to ask you a challenging task. Why challenging? Because just before the coffee break, you have heard a snippet of what our participants, the Academy actually, is already thinking on how this Academy, or possible second, third edition of this process, could look like. What could be its role? What are the challenges? What are the needs, right? So the one part of this first initial question to you is, if you can, already to reflect a little bit on that. If the thoughts when you were preparing your interventions are connecting with what now you're hearing also from the people. And then, of course, the second part of your intervention is a very open invitation that you actually share from your perspective, your institutional role, your role maybe in the steering group. What is your view on the future of the Academy? And I would like to pass the first word to Gvoda, because I know that Gvoda is going to have to leave us in shorter time than the panel is over. So please, the floor is yours. Open the reflection for us.
I was muted before. Yeah, so I just, thank you, Simona. I just wanted to say that when you randomly see me standing up, this is not a political statement. Unfortunately, it's a necessity to catch a plane at this point. But let me start off by saying that I'm extremely happy of these 3 days that we had, and I leave with the feeling that the Academy is something that is needed and was appreciated by you all, and also in terms of course, we can make it better, but nonetheless, this is something that, as a start, is a good starting point for all of us. In terms of my reflections, I think a few things also resonated from the participants, and one of the things I would like to start off with is actually youth work and policy. So even within the Academy, we haven't had that much space to reflect on exactly policy levels and how do we deal with that as a sector. In a way, I think that we we as a sector have always had a certain level of skepticism towards policy, youth policy or youth work policy, and there is a certain mistrust about that the policy is too slow, maybe it's not reflecting the needs, maybe it's something from another century, and etc. But also I think what is there to realize and to kind of reaffirm is that we are also responsible for making the policy happen in a way. No one else is going to do it for us. So we also have to be present and have to be active and have to be engaged, and also be aware that we have to dedicate the time in order to bring people on board and for people to understand what we're doing and the value of that. The second thing I also want to sort of reflect on is youth work as a bubble. And of course, the Youth Work Academy, in a certain way, is a bubble that is looking into itself, looking what are the trends, what are the needs, where do we want to go with this, how do we fit in a general agenda, and this is all great. But in a certain way, I think that we also need to dedicate space to look outside of our agenda and also to listen to other sectors without prior judgment. So we cannot also dismiss that they do not create any value for young people just because they are not youth work. And we can also learn a lot, and we can take inspiration, and we can adapt with the things that they also developed to our sector and possibly find cooperation. So I think that active listening and also being able to engage with them, not from a power dynamic, but also from a curiosity dynamic, is something that we are a bit lacking in a way. The third thing I think is also regarding responsibility of the sector itself. And here I have like 3 sub-points that I want to mention. One, of course, is something that has been touched upon in terms of reproducing a lot of the same content, or content that is very similar either through projects or through recommendations or something, but then kind of also not looking at the wider perspective. So one of the things also that we need to do within our bubble is really to see how do we guide ourselves that we are not constantly being about the same thing over and over again. Another thing that also a bit resonated to me when Theo was doing the presentation and hearing some of your reflections is about sort of all of us being sometimes bystanders to things that we know are not right. And here I think, especially in terms of funding programs, it's very difficult coming from a need to fund really great initiatives that achieve value. Sometimes we face that the sector is really knowing about the problems, but not really doing anything. And that doesn't serve any purpose. And I think one of the most horrible examples I heard recently is that an organization in a particular country for 10 years has been abusing funds, and no one really informed, neither the national agency nor took this up. So it's 10 years of money that is going somewhere, and then if none of the sector knows about this, then it's either they're very good at hiding, or you're also not that competitive for funding, you know? So that the accountability within the sector also, I think, is an issue that we need to focus on. The fourth thing I think I want to bring in is a bit of diversity issue. And of course, we looked at the maps, and Theo showed us how we cover Europe. And for me, it's not that much of an issue in terms of how much geographical ground we cover, but more in terms how do we actually manage to shed light on the great initiatives that are happening somewhere locally that can be really inspirational and can also help us to kind of bring this up into different levels. So of course, this is something that we will also reflect in the evaluation steering group in terms of how do we really dig in and find the different things that can be beneficial to be shared. And I think, again, I just want to thank you as participants in terms of also providing so much inspiration for me personally and being active and kind of bringing this energy back to us. But since we are also sometimes caught up in all the bureaucracy and all the things that we need to do administratively, so it's very good to have a personal touch with people that actually use only not only the funding programs, but also aim for higher things. So thank you very much, and thank you for your feedback.
Thank you very much, Goda. And I think thank you also for that kind of a challenging perspective in a way, because we started to hear here in plenary also yesterday a little bit this few voices also of saying, okay, also a space internally to reflect critically on the challenges we are facing as well. So I think this is something we can hear from your intervention amongst the other points. I think we can actually continue. I will give all the speakers first the floor, then at the end we'll open the floor for you, yeah, for the whole academy to interact and ask your own questions as well. So maybe we can just continue actually with Janes and afterwards David and so on, and we come at the end towards my side. And yeah, I would just like to invite you to share your perspective.
Thank you. For me, it was really interesting to try to go very quickly through the needs of participants, your expressions, what you expect from the academy. And I was saying, wow, if all those needs or all those wishes would need to be fulfilled, we would need an event lasting for at least 2 weeks. What I want to say is that expectations are, of course, diverse. And looking into the future, what is needed to be done or what we have to tackle, and I will have only a very pragmatical answers, but and maybe very more narrow, is that we need to place the academy on the map. If we wanted to have a long-term process or long-term project or process, we need to put it on the map. My question is, do we really have a map? And I'm not sure. We have launched the ship, and now we are, going to explore the world to draw the map. This is sometimes, I have a feeling, something like that. I am quite sure that the overall aim, so supporting development of the quality youth work, will be the core of the academy. But I also feel a need, and coming from also your responses, that there is an urge to develop identity of the academy. What is this all about? People also here to the academy came with different expectations. Some have been fulfilled, some not. It was a pilot project and no tradition behind. So it was even hard to imagine what to expect, maybe for a lot of us in that sense. So what is the identity? And the only things we know now is it has to be different from other events. For example, from the European Youth Convention, yeah? Because we don't need the same events. We need maybe more specialized events. And we know what will be the main framework. So our universe will be limited probably with 2 big documents. One is European Youth Work Strategy, and another one is Council of Europe Resolution on the Youth Work. So that is basically the universe where we will draw the map in this. And a lot of expectations are put in drawing this map, also in the youth work agenda, a paper it's talked more and more and not existing yet. And of course, as Sonia mentioned, being a part of instrumentarium processes, supporting developments within the youth work agenda for the academy would be a very, very good thing. On the other side, what I also see as a need and challenge for the future, and Sonia tackled this a bit, is how to ensure long-term perspective. This edition happened because there have been initiative of a few national agencies, some others joining later, partnership as well, and and Salto centers. But if for the next edition we don't marshal enough national agencies, forget it. I think that we have really to ensure what I call, we have to create a stable structure to ensure stability and regularity. Whatever will happen, we need to ensure this stable structure. Take this structure in bracket, I'm not thinking about organization, but still, we need to create this. And for me, it's also clear, and that was also to a certain extent ambition with this addition, to bring more partners, not only more national agencies, but we are all the time also talking about influencing the political processes, the policies at the end. We have to bring also those players into this process of academy, event of the academy as such. But more actors we will bring, more complicated everything will become. So yes, we need, but probably we'll do that gradually. And the last thing, which is reflection under this road until here, it was really a learning process. Probably, if I would be around next time for the academy, some things will happen differently. And that was also very good to try out. And I would like to conclude with the thanks to what you contributed through the Padlet for the future or your expectations. I think that if Theo was talking about the great database, I think that with those answers, you will also help a lot to shape what is needed by the field, and institution will take care to help to shape it what is needed from the institution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Janis. And we are saying goodbye to Gwoda. I think that it was quite clear to hear from your perspective, because both Gwoda and Janis, you're both part of the steering group, so it also comes from being in that role, from this experience. But I think also this call towards the role of the national agencies and the support from your colleagues and so on. So I think it's also, it's a good space to actually discuss that, because I know there is more colleagues also from the other national agencies here, and maybe some are not. And I think this is also important for people who are here, maybe not every day working on this level or having this chance to interact with maybe heads of NAs and other people in your position. So it's good to see your perspective. So thank you for that. Davide, maybe you would like to
Sure, thank you, Simona. Absolutely. First of all, let me convey the greetings from Marta Medlinska, the coordinator of the partnership between the European Commission and the Council of Europe in the field of youth. She would have very much liked being with us these days, but unfortunately she had a small accident. I also would like to convey some information about the reality of the Council of Europe youth sector. Many of you asked me, many of you didn't ask because maybe you didn't dare, or maybe because you thought it's better to keep an optimist perspective, but we are optimists. We are cautiously optimists because there was a meeting last week of ministers responsible for foreign affairs of the member states of the Council of Europe, and the solution was found for bringing back Russia potentially in a pathway toward the council, to full membership in the Council of Europe. And now the situation is in the hands of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe member states. So we are cautiously optimistic that this will be solved soon, and that the youth sector of the Council of Europe will not be any longer under threat. I will tell you at the end of my small intervention why I think this is extremely relevant, besides the pleasure of knowing that such a relevant cluster of opportunities for developing youth work is still in the agenda. The fact that the Council of Europe is also committed to develop a European agenda on youth work also shows, and it was mentioned before, that there's much more Europe than the European Union. We all know the European Union is one of the main, one of the two partner institutions of our partnership, but the Council of Europe is the other, and we are proud of having contributed to bring in more voices, like our friends Johan and other person potentially, to this process. We totally agree that also by terms of youth work and youth work policy, we can learn a lot and we can exchange a lot also from other regions. So we completely agree with what was said before to try, despite or complexity notwithstanding, to try to bring more diversity into the process in the future. The second point is that what we learned during our regional events on youth work, we had a regional event on the state of youth work in Southeast Europe and Caucasus. Some of you were present. We will have one this year on the state of youth work in Eastern Europe. We had one in Southeast Europe and the Western Balkans last year, and we will have one in Eastern Europe and Caucasus this year, and I hope that some of you will participate. So what we learned is that, as we also saw from Matteo's excellent presentation on the first day, youth work is still uneven distributed. This is also what we see through our research work. This is a big element of reflection, how to distribute knowledge, practice, and good practice, and how to enable exchange of these knowledge that we are creating also to areas where youth work and youth work policy are less distributed. And again, we think that the European Academy on Youth Work in the further edition could play a pivotal role. This brings me to the concept of excellence. We appreciated very much a lot of incredibly dense and successful good practice examples, and these are showing that the youth sector and youth work is dynamic, is full of innovation, is full of ideas, and is full of goodwill. But I also think that excellence is not only made by results and outputs, but it also depends on those heroes that are creating the opportunities for youth work, where there are less resources available, less knowledge, less political will. And Europe is full of youth work heroes. Some of you are youth work heroes that have to fight every day for your funding, for your resources, for the visibility, for the recognition. And from my perspective, this is also excellence. The second point I'd like to mention is that as was already mentioned, the elements of policy, practice, and research could be strengthened. I mean, the interaction between these two parts of the triangle. This is at the core of our work in the partnership. We saw again the contribution of Theo, of other researchers here. Marco took the floor. Marco Kovacic took the floor. Thank you for heralding the perspective of researchers, and we appreciate it very much. Still, more can be done, and as the partnership, we are there for supporting this knowledge strand and supporting the dialogue between policy, practice, and research, especially by terms of youth work policy. Finally, let me conclude by bringing to you briefly what we tried and harvest from our perspective and how we as a youth partnership wish to proceed in developing knowledge and developing a dialogue between policy, practice, and research. First, we believe, and this I observed in these 2 days, 2.5, that embedding youth work is a priority within all policy frameworks, not only the Council of Europe and the European Union. At European level, has been done very, very well. As Theo mentioned, a small of history, youth work wasn't on the table. It was not even mentioned at European level until 2001 with the white paper. And by the way, you might not know, but one of the authors of the white paper is sitting here, and if it hadn't been for him and his colleagues, we would not be here today. So Hanyo Schild is one of the authors, and I think we need to give him an applause for having conducted us here. And if you want to see how Hanyo looked when he was young, and you can look in the cover of our youth knowledge book. Second point is that we must reach a Europe-wide definition of who youth workers are. This is what we are trying and doing. This is what we suggest could be a further agenda to be researched. Some of you participate in our workshop on educational pathways of youth workers, and you understand that this is the strand that you are following. Two more small points. More formal education and vocational education and trainings of youth workers must be there on the table, and then how, what curriculum, with what resources. Again, we believe that a European Academy on Youth Work in a further edition can help creating a better understanding. And last thing, continuously promoting formal recognition of youth work, but to reach a parity of status with other professions across Europe. Of course, it's very ambitious, But if you think that this is what we were able to do in the past 20 years, why not to be ambitious and trying to build the future in the next 20 years to reach these ambitious goals? Also thanks to the next editions of the European Academy of Youth Work. I'd like to conclude. The Council of Europe Youth Sectors survives, will flourish together with you, thanks to an incredible work of advocacy and networking of the partners and the friends of the Council of Europe Youth Sector. And I wish now to thank all those persons of you, of the all those persons that are sitting around in this room, all persons that are from your organizations, the persons that you know have supported us for having taken immediate actions for making sure that the youth sector of the Council of Europe could have visibility. And this, I think, shows how all these youth work heroes that are sitting also inside this room and across Europe can make a difference also at European level.
Thank you, Davide. We have heard a few perspectives already. It would be very interesting for us also to hear from the perspective of the European Youth Forum. How do you see the role of maybe the future second edition of the Academy and the process that might bring? You are from an organization that encompasses a lot of youth organizations throughout Europe. So I think, yeah, very valid perspective for us. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, short answer and long answer. So I had the bad luck and good luck to arrive late, which means on one hand I missed a lot of very interesting sessions. On the other hand, maybe I can bring fresh ideas. We will see. The first thing that I noticed talking a bit during the break to the people and the overview from the research is the exchange of the diversity that you all bring. I think that is something that really is at the core of the youth work, that you cannot really always put a framework around it because it is actually the diversity that is so enriching about it. But still we are here to build a common understanding. So as I understood, a lot of these exchanges of views have happened in the last days, and I think that's very important to mobilize ourselves to have a clearer understanding of, well, the diversity of the field. Coming from a representative of youth organizations, a very important component that was mentioned also before is the youth-led part. So where young people actually take the lead, are at the core of both being the beneficiaries but also the organizers of the youth work. And for youth organizations, the volunteering aspect is also very important in that. So when it comes to professionalization of youth work, on one hand, it's a very good sign that we are looking into the quality and that there's a lot of attention to it, and we are welcoming that. But then when we hear professionalization, we're always thinking, okay, but as long as the volunteers can also still continue to make their efforts to do their work. In the context of the European Youth Work Agenda that may be coming, it's important to understand what is the European Academy on Youth Work position in that perspective, because we were talking about including or not including policymakers, but it's important to see, let's say, the bird view of those policy processes and see what's the gap where we can fit in. Okay, that was supposed to be the short answer, but it took a bit longer already. I wanted to take also the chance to just introduce myself a bit more and the work of the Youth Forum. Probably you're aware, but I guess I'm a new face because I'm the new board member since January, responsible for youth work, volunteering, and non-formal education. So I'm the successor of Andrea Casamenti that maybe you met before. He's still in the board, but working on Erasmus+, so still the same enthusiasm, but then at the end of the talk, holding up the hand for the money. You are probably familiar with the work of the Youth Forum as the platform of national youth councils and international youth non-governmental organizations in Europe, representing the voice of young people. So as I mentioned, we have a new board since January. We've been very busy with the European parliamentary elections that are finally taking place this week, with the bus tour, the Changes Coming campaign. We had the Maastricht debate with Spitzenkandidaten and the annual festival in Parliament on our priorities. So that's what's new in the Youth Forum. But I'm pretty sure that also in the new strategic priorities, youth work remains at the core of our work because we are representing the interests of the youth organizations that are doing great efforts on that. And in that context of youth work policy, our priority is the European Youth Work Agenda. I was already mentioned. There's a strong mandate both from the EU side with the EU Youth Strategy, which is a document that mentions it, as well as the Council of Europe recommendation on youth work. As Davide said, like 2001 was maybe the start of everything, and we're really building towards a momentum. So even though all these changes and policies and frameworks can be a bit scary to get into, of course, we want to make sure that everything is better and that it's not limiting us. But at the same time, it's good that there is attention to it, and it's also a big opportunity that we can grasp all together. Talking about Council of Europe, also mentioned already the situation. Also, a big thank you specifically to Slovenia, because it was one of the countries that was very actively opposing the contingency plan taking away the youth sector. So things seem to have settled a bit more carefully optimistic, but everyone was already thanked, but just one more time. Now, from the Youth Forum side, as I mentioned shortly before, the challenge can sometimes be the complexity and having the professionals and the volunteers together in this ecosystem that word was mentioned before when I talked to someone. I think it's a good word, to make sure that really also the youth-led activities are appreciated and that they are also represented here. So that's also something to think about for you. How can you best involve young people that are involved in youth-led organizations to make sure that their views are also represented in those policy processes that are taking place? Because in the end, like paid youth work and volunteer youth work are like siblings. We need both of them. They complement each other. So it's also important to support the entire complexity of the system. Then, well, we are looking forward to cooperating with the German Youth Work Convention that's coming up. It seems still far away, but actually preparations are already starting. So this is also an important event with to bring the perspectives from here into that process. And I would love to talk a lot more about the vision that we have for youth work and some best practices, but I think I've been talking a lot already, so I'll keep it with this for now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We've heard until now already a few references that puts us now in this situation where that we really want to turn to you and hear a little bit more also because you are now in this position where you can give us a more concrete view on how is the process towards the convention, also this ambition around the youth work agenda, and how do you see this academy, maybe this first edition, maybe future editions in that story? Yeah, maybe that's where Janez is talking about the map, and maybe we don't know yet where the map is. How do you see the map and these puzzle pieces on it?
Yeah, thank you. Really, what's left to say after these 4 interventions, where all the things have been mentioned right now? So perhaps I draw a bit, or try to draw a bit, a picture of the future and what's up during the German presidency. It's not only the German presidency, it's also the German chairmanship in the Council of Europe, which starts in November 2020, so there's an overlapping time. And this is also the reason why we why we want to put the European Youth Work Convention at the beginning of December of next year as a link between these 2 presidencies, and also as a link between the work of the Council of Europe. We have mentioned the recommendation on youth work and the coming youth work agenda based on the decisions of the youth ministers on the EU youth strategy. So this is, we think both pillars, the Council of Europe and the European Union. What I really much liked was this morning when Theo said the academy is a place where we can see what gaps are there and how we could find solutions. And this is what I discovered during the last days, that there was a very intense discussion about what is my reality as a youth worker somewhere in Europe, and what's the reality of the others, and how does that inspire me, give me an idea about what is on the agenda, and how do deal other people with that problems or with that things and situations. Coming to the youth work agenda, this is still, let's say, a blank piece of paper. We have the decision of the youth ministers to create a youth work agenda, to strengthen or to further develop quality and innovation and recognition of youth work. But what it means, it's still open. So we have the idea of picking that up for the German presidency, but I also have to say, we at the moment we don't have the okay of the minister for our presidency program, so this is still under construction. We just start to think about what it means, an European youth work agenda. I say European Youth Work Agenda because we have this Council of Europe thing within, and it's not only the EU. But what we do is we want to have a conclusion of the EU on that. That means a paper, so that we have a starting point for the agenda somewhere, a frame fixed for what it means. And then we want to, with the convention, we want to have something like a launching event by 500 to 600 participants. We want to invite, and then creating an idea of how to realize such an agenda. That means also involvement of different levels of people, researchers, practitioners, oh my God, practitioners, is that right? Policymakers, which is also a huge challenge. We have seen that from the conventions. The Belgians have made the first two ones, and this is also for me a bit the difference between an academy and the convention. The academy, you have said that before, is with the approach no recommendations to policymakers. And the convention, from my point of view right now, or at the moment, is that there should be recommendations for policymakers, for sure. This must be one of the outcomes of the convention. And what I felt is that there was a huge demand of an event like the Academy right now here on this level. People from all over Europe come together and discuss what is the situation. And I think this is a good thing to put that somehow in the process of creating the agenda, also in bringing the results of this event into the convention. But how we do that is still an open question. We are not at the very beginning, but we are at the beginning of the creation of this process and the preparation of the convention.
Thank you very much. I think this gives us a very important perspective, not just for everybody sitting on this panel, but everybody in this room. And I think listening to you gives us all imagination how we see ourselves in that process, And hopefully also, like you said, also these findings that Theo is putting together and this academy is producing are going to also be an important stepping stone in that process. So let me now take 10 minutes and actually open the floor. If somebody would like to ask a question or maybe comment just on what you heard, we have a little bit of time for a short exchange.
Dun, 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 dun. Yes.
Hello, I'm teaching students in social work, and I think we should open this by a virtual part of this academy in the future. So in every session I thought, oh, I would like my students have behind me. But they could have been here because we have the technique to give an online view on this. We even have the technique to give feedback to the teacher. But the only thing is missing is that we would have needed the information 4 weeks before. If I had known that one of these sessions is open on a certain day, on a certain time, I could say to my students, come here, we make a seminar doing this, and we could even give our input to this. And I think that would be a great idea to open it to more participants here, because the technique is here.
Thank you very much. We'll take a few more, and then we'll come back to the panel to respond to everything on blog. Any other question or suggestion? Final comment?
Okay, there's one.
And Darko, then we have here one more in the front.
Just a short one. I would like to thank you guys for having us here, and myself as well. It was really unique learning experience, I would say. And I totally agree with Yanis that more should be done in terms of defining identity of the academy, and especially in seeing how beneficial it can be for different stakeholders, being it online or offline. I totally also support the idea that more people should hear what's going on. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Here.
Hello, Matej from Slovenia. I've got a question for the panelists. We have quite few different realities here in European countries. In some countries, youth work is really developed, supported. It's a strong system in these countries, and they have their own body of knowledge, systemic funds to support it financially and so on. And in some other countries, these are weak marginal systems. Youth work is a weak marginal systems where with no systematic support, with no systematic funds put inside and so on. And I think that needs towards European Youth Academy are very different in these both marginal groups. No one developed one and less developed one. Maybe, I don't know, it's my assumption that maybe the countries which are more developed only need exchange of knowledge and maybe to see different contexts, but countries which are less developed probably have even higher needs, maybe even to develop their own systems, to develop their own body of knowledge. No? So I think that, again, as in many other cases, Europe is divided and we have to consider all different needs.
Thank you very much. Any final comment or question? Final one? And then we're going to, okay, then we're going to have to close after that.
Nereus, this time on behalf of International Youth Work Trainers Guild. I like the idea of involving more partners as stakeholders. So trainers could be one of the stakeholders. Researchers are also. I also thought that youth work is actually very localized activity. So it would be nice to have stakeholder which represents local municipalities, because at the end of the day, they actually employ youth workers. So a couple of stakeholders which would be nice to have for the second European Academy on Youth Work.
Thank you very much. And I think there was Theo and maybe one more in this side, and then we're going to close the questions, comments.
Thanks. Here I am again. I just wanted to make a comment that it's outside of my kind of mandate as a researcher for the Academy. Just from my kind of human rights, equality background, and what I've seen both through the Academy experience, but just more generally, is that and this is kind of my own personal view, there are growing divisions within Europe. And those divisions are caused for all those reasons that we talked about today in the last 3 days, whether it's the political, the economic reasons, and there's this widening gap between those who have and those who don't have. And this is about young people, right? And it's encouraging to see so many people here dedicating their time from different backgrounds, different fields. But the sense that I'm getting is that on the one hand, there is the willingness to support youth work, which historically has been created to address this imbalance that we're experiencing in Europe, but everywhere. On the other, while we're doing initiatives such as the one that we're planning to have on the European Youth Agenda, the convention, another convention, this very institution, this event, I just want us to be mindful of how we support the grassroots and those who created the youth work notion in the first place. And what I mean by that is I think it's very important that the core and the history and the very concept of youth work is maintained. Because what we tend to do is that when institutions, governments, organizers, steering committees trying to help, most of the time we do it in a top-down controlled way. And the intentions might be very good because we want the initiative to succeed. But what I've also seen is that when we let go and we share the power, we don't just control the power, but we share the power, the results are transformative. And I think youth workers and young people and those who work in the youth field have actually proven that with or without that top-down support, youth work will take place. It will take place in those neighborhoods, in those estates, in wherever it needs to take place. It's just how we do it and how we disseminate that power while we support the movement and the work that is being done at the local, national, and the European level.
Thank you. Okay. We've gotten some questions, we've gotten some reflections, and I would really invite our speakers now to try to make brief responses when needed, and if not every question is relevant to you, it's also fine. Yeah? So please, here are microphones. If you want to go first, Johannes, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I really like them because now we could discuss about OnLive and being present on OnLive and streaming and all this. The only answer I can have, if it would be announced, one of the things we learned that things, at the end, there is no time enough for everything. We would have to know the program 2 months in advance. That was not the case. But on the other side, the YouTube channels with all the recordings will remain. And you can invite your students to look at in the future together. I know it will not be the same as participating directly, but still, yeah, in that sense. Second, I mentioned, because I mentioned this, involve more partners. And yes, one of the framework of potential partners are for me also local and regional authorities, which are really important for the youth work. Most, as you mentioned, most of our things are done at the local level, municipal, town levels, yeah? But who to involve? To bring only, let's say, 10 municipalities here will not have systemic impact. And we can invite every time 10 and 10 and 10. So we have to involve their framework, for example, Congress of Regional and Local Authorities, and bring the issue by involving them as a partner, as an institution, and bring the topic of the quality in youth work and transfer their responsibilities or abilities into their framework. So this is, I imagine, as a dialogue between the academy and involve other partners. And I hope we will be able to continue that. So ensure systemic impact in all this. And about the different realities, yes, I am very aware of those situations, but sometimes, we tried also in this academy to take into account that there are different realities, that some of the things which are novelty, new developments, very important developments in one part would not be really the same category in another one. And this is our response to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a few comments based on the questions. The one about the diversity in the like backgrounds of different countries and what type of structures they already have in place for youth work. I think it's still very relevant for them to meet, because if there was nothing to do, we wouldn't be here. Like, we're not obsolete. There is society is also changing, so new things are arising, like digitalization. Still, youth work as a means to combat exclusion of young people is still something that is a challenge that we can answer in all the different countries, because inequalities continue to exist. So in that sense, even more mobilized countries when it comes to youth work, I think, have enough practices to share. And then still we are working towards one European framework where we would have to take into account all the different realities. So in that sense, it's still important to all be together and share the different frameworks that there are, and to make sure that there's a common ground and that we understand like which framework on a European level could encompass all these differences. Yeah, I guess that was my point.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to her?
I just want to thank the national agencies who took the initiative to create this academy. And as it said, it's a pilot, and I think there's something to learn still after the academy. And so I'm thankful also for all these comments on the academy and what could be done better in the future.
Okay, then thank you very much. Thank you for the short answers. I think that what we've heard now, it's also a clear commitment also that everything you've suggested so far towards the role of the academy, all your reflections on it and open questions is something that will be taken on board further. So at this point, I think we can close our panel discussion and move into the very final element or part of today's first edition of the Academy, namely the evaluation and closing of it. So for that, thank you very much, dear guests, dear panelists, steering group members, Youth Forum Ministry.
Thank you very much. The panelists, thank you for Simona for moderating. I hope some clarity on the map is maybe not fully there, but elements are maybe starting to appear or emerge. We are coming back to the end of the first or zero edition of the European Academy on Youth Work. And talking about the future, you will get in your inboxes soon, you will get the evaluation questionnaire. And the evaluation questionnaire will also ask you all those questions about how did you like the format of the Academy, the length, the content, the methodology, the approach, who should be invited in the future. So all sorts of questions regarding the design of the event and maybe the future of the event will be there in the questionnaire. So we're not going to ask you that now, but we're going to keep the tradition that was created 3 days ago. So we go first for the feelings race, and then we have another 3 questions just for the short, quick evaluation in the end. So inspired, reflective, satisfied. As Theo would say, one unhappy person is not there anymore. So we have 1 board, 12 reflective, 2 board, 12 reflective, 2 is 12, 13 inspired, 7 satisfied. Okay, it's getting there. Oh, unhappy person is back. We have the also count of the final session of the 2 unhappy, 5 board, 18, 12, 57 people, 59 people. Okay. Apparently lots of people are already leaving or about to leave. Yeah. Okay. It's getting there. 68. And maybe last few seconds for the last final contribution. Oh. Good. have 3, 9, 22, 23, 20, 15. Good. Thank you very much. We had 75 people voting. We have 23, 23, 24, 23 for reflective, 24 for inspired, 17 satisfied, 10 are bored, and 3 are unhappy. And if you would maybe have one with for the lack of air, I think it will be even harder. So, next question for you, very quickly one, will be very interesting to hear from you in 3 keywords, in literally 3 words. What summarizes the main impressions for you when you take the Academy as a whole? So we're not speaking now about the panel, about this day, but the Academy as a whole. So what are the 3 keywords that you would kind of say, okay, these are my 3 impressions, my 3 keywords that actually describes Academy as a whole. And please don't put Marco Frimbergen then. Yes, because Marco doesn't want that anymore. Okay. It's getting hardworking, inspiring. 42 is back. It seems the hard work used to be leading, but hard work is slightly disappearing in the overall picture. Inspiring, networking, inspiration, innovation, ideas, diversity, connecting. And okay, so we can see there's inspiring, networking, ideas, innovation, and then maybe on another level, diversity, connections, and maybe less, confusing, exploring, community, sharing, new people, challenging, overloaded, hard work, mountains, and full. As I said, we will ask you more specifically about the format, but we would like to ask you about the 3 qualities. So the next question will be, to what extent the Academy for you was a space for learning, to what extent it was space for networking, and to what extent it was a space for recognition, on a scale from 1 to 6. So learning, networking, recognition. Okay, so in search for identity of the future Academy, maybe a profile like this could help, maybe, or maybe some other dimensions might be added there. So apparently, the current Academy was, let's say, to the same extent, a place for learning and networking, and to a lesser extent, it was a space for recognition. So if you remember our little primary school performance of Simona and me from the opening, so it was more about the books and less about the statuettes. And it was quite a lot about networking as well. And last question is, what will you tell back home? So when you go back home and your colleagues ask you, how was this thing there in Kranjska Gora? In one sentence, what will you say? Peoples. You need to go. Engage more. Read my report. Go for it. Let's do the research. Motivated me. Too bad Michelle was not here. Trendy. That's fantastic, and we learn a lot with. Implement new ideas and practices. Trendy, again, current trends. It was cool. We need network. New digital tools used. It's possible to teach human rights with gamification. Inspiring, surprising, new ideas for our work. Super organization, opportunities to see that you are not alone. Full of different approaches on youth work. There are 100,000 of different ways to do youth work. 42 again. Quality matters. Piece and bits to connect in one meaningful whole. Lots of interesting workshops to learn from. Finally, who is Marco Frimberger? Not so much new information about youth work or innovation, but some good new contacts. Sharing lots of ideas for the 3rd European Youth Work Convention and European Youth Work Agenda. Exhausting, inspiring, long, overdue, slightly overloaded, better weather than expected, too much food. Slovenia is such a nice country. Cool ideas, super menti, inspiring goals, not so clear, a lot of diversity, gamification. We are already doing a great job. International unification. Now I know what is 42. Lashko is the best beer. Lots to learn from. Read my report. Youth work is so different all over Europe. Still we can learn from each other. I love the diversity and connectivity. Let's open up. Interesting event, but how will it go on? I'll never zoom out again. It was interesting. Darko rocks. Great place. A bit too long. Practice the new. Connect different practices. We won at the escape room. Bravo. We should get a Menti subscription. Thank you for the hearts. I see I'm replacing Marco Frimberger now. Trendy. New digital communications as a way for youth work. It was full cool. And Massimo is a party animal. Let's stop there. Thank you very much. A big applause for all of you and for all of us for being here. Yeah. So the questionnaire is coming to your inboxes, but just to switch, as Theo would say, to switch the mandate, so to give our mandate back. So I give our mandate back to Hanyo and Janez to say a few thank you and closing words. I need another mic.
Yeah. The last task for this event for me and Hanyo. We are at the end. I started talking about the road and was continuation, and we are not at the end of the road. But to come so far here, especially last 3-4 days, that wouldn't be possible without many people who have been involved, and I would like to thank you, and I hope I can invite you to thank them as well. People behind the scenes. I would like, first of all, to thank you, the video team, or the media. I would like to thank you, so-called technical support team, but it was not only technical. I would like to thank Sabina, Eva, Miriam, and Tina for helping up, and many of you have benefited from their support to the activity. But I said not only technical. For example, Tina contributed a lot also to our visibility. She made a blog for every day with a recap of the day. So if you had not really remember what happens during the particular day, just read her blog. It's on the Academy website. Thank you, Tina, in particular, for that. And to mention also, And no, it is not a Slovenian passport holders team. Among them is also Miriam, who comes from Georgia, currently serving as a European Solidarity Corps volunteer nearby in this region. So, and then we come to the facilitators, Darko, Simona, Laimonas. I think that you have done a great job. Thank you very much. Of course, things would stay here if we would not have communication with outside world, which is not only technical thing, but it's also about words and communication referent or officer or expert. Domagoj, thank you for your work as well. I don't remember that I have been in any event where we have involved so much the, let's call it, research dimension in live streaming. And for that, I would like to thank Aidan and Theo for their unslept night, at least last night. So, this is not all. We also this would not happen without what I jokingly call a Houston Control Center. And in that control center have been since January this year Susanna. Many of them you getting caught up without her, you will be probably lost in the universe. And of course, since the September or October last year, the Houston Control Center was in the hands of Sonia. Thank you. And this is not for me as a host, but also as a non-formal or informal chair of the steering group. I hope I can speak in everyone on behalf. I would also like to thank everyone who participated in the steering group, with the participating nationals. Thank you. And just to, beside me is Alejandro. Just to say that when we started this project, this road, back in January 2018, Hanyo was the first coordinator of the event, and then due to the certain circumstances, he could not continue, and that became to Hanover. And he would also like to address and say a few words.
Yeah, thank you very much. I told you on Tuesday the story of the academy, but there's also a little hidden history about it. Last year in July, for very personal reasons, I had to take a tough decision and to refrain from the management of the academy. And luckily, at that time, we found a proper solution by identifying Sonia as the person who would do that. And looking back to this decision, I must say that it was a very wise decision. First, because for personal reasons, I could manage my personal stuff. And Sonia could manage very good and very excellently the organization and implementation of the academy, much better than I could ever have done it. So therefore, I want to thank you very specifically, because of course this decision was not easy for me to take at that time, and I think it was good to have this. And for as a present, it's more a symbolic present. I printed for you a short story of Franz Kafka from 1917. It's called Report for an Academy. And it's in English and in German, so you can both read it together. The short story is about an ape who reports to an academy his transformation from ape to human being, and how this happened through teachers, but also, as we would say today, through non-formal learning and informal learning. It's a very funny story. You should read it, or I invite all of you to Google it and also to read it when you go home. It's only 7 pages or so. It's a funny story about an academy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hania. Sonia, will you say something?
No. No, not really. Except maybe, I'm not sure if this is still in your plan to say that, but I would like to thank all of you for because as always, no, without you, we couldn't have done it. Thanks.
Yes, it was planned, but thank you for doing that. Yes, really, thank you, because you can have a great program, you can have a nice weather, you can have a luxurious environment, but without people, without participants, without those who feel the content, that is space, not the content, but it's the space. Academy wouldn't work. Really, thank you. Thank you for coming to Slovenia. And now at the end, I wish you all good journey way home. I hope you will that you will not be now really overcharged for extra weight of your luggage you are taking from this academy. And yeah, hope in 2 years we see each other again. Thank you very much, and the end.
Thank you all. And before you leave, you have 1 minute from our video referent, again, the final product, and then have a good trip back home.